Before you get into detailing out your sculpture, it's important to provide yourself with a framework. And this is very similar to any other kind of workflow. Essentially, you want a starting point. And there's many ways you can generate a starting point. Of course, I showed you where you can source some 3D assets such as Sketchfab or Minifactory Scan the World. And that's probably the easiest way to begin one. For example, I here have this character Atlas who is pre-posed and ready to go. So we could dive straight into sculpting this as a starting point if we so desire. Now, there are a couple of other ways which are quite handy, and the first one hopefully you're already a little bit familiar with is called the Metaballs method. And this is a fantastic way to generate a form rapidly. And so I'm going to go to Add and Metaball. And they have a few different base shapes you can begin with, but I'm just going to begin with the ball. And this is a really handy tool for blocking out for sculpture. And of course, I could freeform this, or I could use a guide. So I'll show you both ways really quickly. So when I want to use the metaballs, you'll see it comes in with this like sphere and then this like outline sphere. And I can just move it around the scene. But what really gets interesting is when I use the copy command. So if I press Shift D, it will copy the metaball, and you'll see that it kind of blobs together with the first one. And immediately, I can just do it again. If I press the S key to scale it, you'll see I have scaled the metaball, and you'll see that this is really quickly creating a kind of organic blobby blockout of my sculpture. And I could do anything with this. I could make it turn into a character rather quickly in a very traditional sense, perhaps like something you might see in a cartoon. Right, I've got two arms and a body, etc. And that's a perfectly fine way to do that. And this gives you an amazing base point as a blockout to sculpt with. The other way that's really handy is to just follow a guide. So what you could do is just use a kind of form work as like a skeleton guide, and essentially you do the same thing. You just copy the metaballs in position around that form. And where this becomes handy is if you don't want it to resemble the original at all. And you can just borrow from the broad strokes, the geometric orientation, and but not any of the detailing. And you're going to allow yourself to detail that out. And of course, you can play with the proportions on that body rapidly by just scaling that around. And of course, we could merge these things together, which would be quite interesting perhaps. Give them kind of pants, metaball pants here, which might actually be kind of sweet. Once you have your metaballs kind of oriented and positioned how you want them, what you need to do is select them all, and then you can say convert to a mesh. And now this has kind of frozen them. You'll see that they're still joined here, so I'll actually separate those by just going into the edit mode, grabbing one of the faces, selecting all of the length, and say mesh separate by selection. So I've separated this, and now I have a sculpture base point, which I'll just kind of set aside for now while I go over some of the other methods. So we have, starting from just a geometry, which of course we know how to do. We can start from kind of a raw metaball blockout or some kind of combination of those two.